approval of the minutes from June 3rd, which you were sent in the mail. May I have a motion to approve those minutes, please?
I move we approve the minutes from the meeting of June 3rd, 2020.
I'll second.
Second, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 And those opposed by the same sign. That will pass then, and we'll move on to the next item, which is the approval of the agenda. And you had that in your packet also. May I have a motion to accept that approval for this evening?
Motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed
Aye.
by the same sign. Thank you. That also passes. So we are on to the next order of business, which is the new business. I will ask that Jesse read, or Bob, I don't know which one of you is going to read and discuss that with us. This now begins the public hearing, and you'll be asked if you would like to comment after the beginning of the new business is talked about. So go ahead, Kathy.
So I'll just give a brief statement. So this project is a public hearing for a variance request to allow a property that is currently in a R1 single family residential neighborhood to be allowed to be divided up into a multiple unit building. The address is 820 Cleveland Street. So hopefully you all were able to take a look at the property and the area that it's in. And then that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to comment on this case? Kyle, I see your hand up in the air. Would you please indicate who you are and maybe your address, please, and then you may go ahead and speak.
My name's Kyle. I'm the potential owner of 820 Cleveland. I'm looking to get a variance because this property has been and always has been a multifamily house. Only since it's been acquired by the land bank has the zoning board rezoned it for R1. And it just doesn't seem financially feasible for anyone to pick up this 5,000 square foot property for single family use. And I'd like to pick it up, use it as a multifamily house, renovate the property. There's also been discussions that I might use it as a slumlord property. It is currently condemned and cannot be used in its current state. So it will need to go through the city and be evaluated with its new current condition after I'm done with it before people are legally allowed to be living in the property. And I just want to leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
Nancy, I also have 2 write-in comments from the public.
Want
me to read those?
Yes, please.
Okay. The first is, I believe he explains. His name is Garth Bergman. Okay. I'm writing in response to the notice I received regarding the above public hearing scheduled for August 5th at 6 p.m. I own the property across the street at 815 Cleveland, which is a single family rental property. My renter indicates that this is a nice, quiet neighborhood to live in without much traffic. Several years ago, the neighborhood revitalization program renovated several houses in the single family residential zoned area. It was my understanding the intention was to increase the number of owner-occupied properties in this area of the city. Even though I am a landlord, I would also like to see more owner-occupied homes rather than rental properties within the neighborhood. I would like to express that I am against the variance request to allow a multifamily home at 820 Cleveland. I believe this project would create a disturbance to the neighborhood by increasing the number of people in the neighborhood, which would in turn create more traffic and more rubbish. The traffic would increase more safety issues for children, as well as potentially more accidents at unmarked intersections. And with additional tenants who will not care about the property the same as owners, the likelihood for rubbish to be scattered about. The added traffic, noise, and rubbish would disturb my renters at 815 Cleveland, as well as the lives of other residents of the surrounding blocks, including the owners of the NRP homes. There are several areas that are zoned multifamily. Please work with the developer to find a better suited location. Thank you for your time and consideration. And then I do have one more. This is from a Kim Nothifer. I was recently made aware of the request for a variance from R1 to R2, which isn't the case. I corrected him about this. In 2017, the Covenant Neighborhood Association 2007. The Covenant Neighborhood Association petitioned for this neighborhood to be rezoned to R1. The rezoning was subsequently approved by ordinance in 2008. I have spoken with the members who were on the Covenant Neighborhood Association board at that time. They are all still members of the association, and they all feel that the ordinance is as important today as it was when it was approved in 2008. The association worked with Councilman Larry Caloris to get this rezoning approved. Councilman Caloris also felt it was imperative for the ordinance to cover not just the immediate association boundaries, but to reach out beyond to help adjacent areas who were also struggling with the same issues. I have also spoken with several other association members who agree that the ordinance is as important today as it was then. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie.
Welcome.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this issue before we take it under advisement? And I'll just ask one more time if there's anyone else that would like to speak before we close the public hearing on this. Okay, seeing or hearing none, I will say that the public hearing is now closed, and which means that the board can now discuss it amongst ourselves, but there is no more room for any public comment. So the board, does anyone have any questions or comments, concerns?
Need a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close.
I'll support.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 And those opposed, same sign. So that does pass. The public hearing is now closed, and now the board will be able to discuss the variance request from Kyle. So, does anyone have any questions or concerns, comments they'd like to talk about here?
Can you hear me at all?
Yes, I can, Jack.
Going back to what some of the letters that Cassie had about the Covenant Neighborhood Association, I was on the zoning board when he made those decisions. The decision is basically they just wanted to keep everything single family if they could, and not expand the apartments around the hospital. That decision was made many years ago.
Right. To that point also, I think that I respect the amount of work that the neighborhood association put into working towards that, but also the packet that we received in the mail. Again, you know, they would like single family residents. And I think we can all appreciate the fact that you're interested in that property, Kyle. But unfortunately, at least for me, I would like to see it stay a single family. And I know it's a large home, but I just appreciate, like I said, what the neighborhood is doing and trying to get those back to and some stayed at single family dwellings. So I don't know if anybody else has any more comments about this piece of property.
I do.
Uh-huh.
I kind of missed the end of what Commissioner Nash was saying at the end, something about the Covenant Hospital.
Yeah, many years ago, Covenant wanted to see single-family homes, and that's a lot.
Okay.
One reason a lot of that was rezoned.
Okay.
When Larry Coloris was on City Council.
Right. Okay.
And this has already been before City Council before because of this issue.
Correct. Yeah, Nancy, thanks for letting me speak. Bill Ostash here. So I was a resident of the Covenant Neighborhood Association when that took place back in 2000. I moved into that neighborhood in 2005. And some history of Saginaw, why we petitioned that. The east side was in the same situation at one time, and they petitioned the east side to be R1 because we had too many people that were buying up the big homes, like the one that I live in, and they were cutting them up into multifamily. And a lot of times we were walking away from them, I guess. So when I lived in that area, after 2008, the mortgage crisis hit, everything was on sale. So we were having the same problem on the west side and even infiltrating into our historic district on the other side of Court Street. So that was a big push for me being a part of that neighborhood association to stop some of that coming in. And the way that the ordinance was written in the way that it was, that after 1 year, it would revert back to R2. And we can't help the fact that the land bank is the owner, and that's when it happened. So I know how the people feel about it. I know how they still feel about it. I did reach out to some of the folks that live in that area myself, and I only had one person that was saying, well, it would be nice to see if it was back on the tax rolls again and functioning within the city. So being on city council, I can understand that because when people talk about the rubbish bill, every time we lose a house in the city, that increases everybody else to have to pay their share. And that also, we can look at the water bills and such like that. So I can understand the financial impacts around it, including the taxes that would be paid. However, I'm going to go back to the folks that live there and the issues that were happening at the time. And I'm gonna stay with that neighborhood because I would hate to see how they would feel if I was to make a decision against what their wishes were. I do want to make one more comment on the letter that you received because they were talking about trash being all over the place and increased traffic. We can't predict the future. And so I'd like to make that comment so that is on the record, that was kind of projecting something that's going to happen that can happen, because we all know that we have landlords that are not so tentative to their tenants, and that does happen. But then we also have landlords that are very good landlords and they do watch their properties. So I wasn't really on board with those comments coming in on that letter. And that's all I'm going to have to say for right now.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else have anything to say? Any comments?
Mighty big house. I drove by. That is huge for one family.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
Of course.
Sure.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it was a person from the public or a commissioner. I live in a 3,800 square foot, 3-story home with 2 people. So it depends on what you want to live in. And it's a restored Victorian. So it took a lot to restore it. But if the land bank was to put some sort of program into place that they could get that house restored where somebody could move back into it, it would make a nice house for a single family, especially with maybe 3, 4, or 5 kids.
Agreed. I'm just saying, that's a mighty big place.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't want to see it tore down because it's salvageable.
Right, that's another issue.
That part of Saginaw, it hurts me every time I see, the house gone. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not, for or against it. I think I'll go with the flow, but.
Yeah, and it's not too far off Court Street. I kind of dropped down on the maps, Google Maps, and it's about, I think, 4 or 5 blocks off of Court Street, which does have a lot of businesses in the area too. So that's something to consider.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair?
And it's within walking distance of LaBeef's Park.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, a very old historic bar in the city.
Madam Chair.
My dad owned the pool table there.
Madam Chair, may I speak?
Yes, Zenobia, go right ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm looking at the materials that we were sent about the case J20-0023. And the comments listed indicated that this property, well, this home was constructed in 1864. And it says that according to the records, in 1966, it was owned and occupied by a single family. And it wasn't until 20 years later that it was sold and converted to a two-family unit. And since then, it's gone back and forth from a two-family unit to a three-unit building, and those types of things. In 2007, when the Covenant Neighborhood Association petitioned that their neighborhood be rezoned from R2 to R1, they did that to prevent large homes, and my assumption at that point is large historical homes in the Saginaw area, from being converted to multifamily apartments. This is a concern also of mine, where our challenge to ensure that buildings, homes, et cetera, are occupied, that we don't lose sight of some of our historical significance in these buildings that we have in our area. To, again, rezone the R1 back to R2 seems to be a little bit, well, I would just say a little bit lacking in historical sensibility. Again, my concern is that I think that if there is enough interest generated by the Historical Association in Saginaw to look at this home and renovate the home, and in that manner save some of our history in Saginaw. It's easy to tear down a building, but it is more conducive, I think, to the area to keep the building renovated and use it in terms of the original intent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments?
I've got another one that I thought of too. I've actually got a couple, Madam Chair.
Sure, go ahead, please.
Okay. So if somebody were to make a motion on this property to pass, the only concern I have is that you do start to set precedents, because then if somebody else comes along and they want to do the same thing, and going to what the commissioner was just speaking about in the historical part of the home, because it is built in the mid 1800s, which is like Civil War era. I think the motion would have to be worded in such a way that we wouldn't set that precedence. We'd have to word something into the motion as to that, that there is history in the house, so I'm just putting that up as a concern. The motion would have to be written in such a way that we would not set that precedence. The other concern that I do have is that the home is still owned by the land bank. So if we were to make a motion to approve, what if Mr. George decided not to do the project for some sort of reason? Who knows, under inspections? I'm not sure where we are. It seems like right now we don't have the shovel in the ground yet, but we're trying to approve the project. So that's the other concern that I have with this as well, because when I was serving on the Historic District Commission, some of the motions that we made and passed were contingent upon any zoning and planning and project site plans had to be all approved and ready to go. So that was always kind of worded into the motions that we made.
And does staff have a comment on that? Do you know anything about that?
Yep, just so you do know, this would be approved condition on Kyle purchasing the property. And then it would only be approved for Kyle. If anybody else tried to come back with the same thing, they wouldn't automatically get the variance that he's being granted.
Right.
Okay. So they would have to come before you again.
Yeah. Cassie, we also had another situation in that same neighborhood when it was Dick Garber that owned the house that was then, they were looking for a variance on that property as well because they wanted to have, I think, residents in there. So that was something else that came up in the past too. And that was going to be then specifically just for that house and only that application.
Yeah. And this, just so you are clear, we're not rezoning this property. It's strictly a variance to allow multiple tenants.
For only for only that particular owner.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, for only that owner.
I have a question for Mr. George if he's still with us.
He is.
Okay. Any plans as to what you would do to the property and what when the project would start, and when do you think you'd be done and actually have the sign off to have tenants moving in?
So the construction would start right away, probably within the next week. I still want to do another evaluation of the property. I've been getting lots of reports of break-ins, so I don't know what the current condition of the house is. I have walked the property, but it has been about a month or so. I've done multiple properties in the Saginaw area, so this is not new to me as far as renovations of properties.
Okay. I'm
not looking to redesign the entire property or just completely update or make it a livable property as it is currently. It has multiple rooms and bathrooms, kitchens, all that. I'm just basically renovating what's already there, not reinventing the wheel or anything like that.
Sure.
Time frame, I'm hoping 6 months to a year. It's actually quite a large property and quite a large project. So I'm hoping that's a feasible time frame.
I think a year is doable. You said you mentioned other properties that you own in the city. Are these also rentals?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Are you a member of the Landlords Association as well, or familiar with?
So I've had a property manager, local in Saginaw, deal with them for me. But mainly I would be in charge of purchasing, renovating, and the property manager would be in charge of maintaining the property for me.
Okay.
Because per the code, you have to have a property manager at a certain distance to the property. And being here in Midland, I don't think I'm that close.
Okay. How many properties do you own and what addresses are they at?
So currently it's down to 0, but at one time I owned 5. Address is 2113 Coolidge Avenue. Next one is 2803 Weiss Street. Next one is 2331 Linda Avenue.
Okay, that's good.
Next one is 406. Oh, okay.
So Cassie, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to establish some history of the properties and like what kind of complaints would have came in on those properties with Mr. George as their landlord and how they would have been dealt with. Just to kind of ease any concern for the neighbors that are in this neighborhood with the 2 letters that we got, and just me living in that neighborhood and knowing how adamant they were to get this rezoned to R1. So even though it is just the single property and a variance. Does that make sense? Anybody have any concerns on that?
Would you repeat that, Bill? What about the concerns? The last statement. I'm sorry, I cut you off because I have a question also.
Sure. And I'm a little hoarse today, suffering from allergies. So let me try to clear my voice. Why I was just kind of wondering like how many properties that Mr. George had, because and kind of what the history of the property would have been when the tenants were there, because I've already gotten quite a few calls from other neighborhoods where somebody has bought a home and then somebody comes in and then there's all kinds of issues with the property. And that's something that we can always deal with as a city, because then it becomes a quality of life issue through public nuisance. But I was just kind of curious what the history is with the other properties that were owned, and if we were to go ahead with a variance on this, if we would have that same situation. So I know it's something that it's kind of hard to look up because you got to look it up in the system by pulling up the addresses.
Mm-hmm. My question to Mr. George, have you considered the home, if you purchase this, to use it as a single family dwelling? What is the reasoning behind your idea of a multifamily? Just because of the size of the home?
The size and the current layout, it would take extensive financial resources to basically gut the entire house and redesign the entire house, go back to single family home.
Right, because you've got three units with kitchens, baths, and such. Yeah.
Could I ask a question, Mr. George?
And currently,
Could I
yes,
ask,
go ahead.
what is your hardship if this isn't approved? What is the hardship?
Just the application fee to meet with you people. That's it.
There needs to be a specific hardship to rezone something like this to make a variance.
And I thought there was a special case because the land bank owns it. They've given me the right to purchase the property contingent on your guys' decision on the variance.
So the hardship, Jack, would be the economic hardship of having that large of a house in a neighborhood that typically does not have similar homes, and can imagine if it is fully renovated, which I know we have Bill on here with similar type of home, but it's really the economic hardship of that size of a home, that size of a renovation.
But isn't it specifically we're not supposed to make zoning variances on economic hardship, correct?
Is the hardship on the owner at the time?
But it's not, it can't be economic.
We waiting for an answer from staff maybe on that, or are we all set here?
With Cassie, are we supposed to make variances on economic hardships?
Bob, do you have an answer to that? I did not, I guess I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, if you look at the report, there are economic situations in which if you follow the strict zoning requirements, you would have an economic hardship from the standpoint that you would not be able to operate or put in the multifamily unit as proposed. So I guess from that standpoint, that's the hardship.
Okay.
If I could just comment on something, as chairman, one of the concerns that I have with the situation is the history of the building. It has been, in my mind, abused because it hasn't been kept up. There's been several occasions where the inspection crew has had to go in and either board up the house or whatever. It was physically condemned and considered a dangerous unit back in 2018. So I'm fearful that if Mr. George goes in there, that he's not going to bring it up to rental standard code. So, I mean, if you are seriously considering granting the variance, I would recommend that you put some stipulations on that.
Nancy, can you mute your mic, please?
Some stipulations that would we would require perhaps some stamped architectural drawings indicating that would show the building department that that he is going to bring it up to code and that it is going to be safe.
Do you mind if I comment on that?
I don't know if we have.
Do you mind if I comment?
She nodded. She nodded.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. George.
Okay, I just want to mention again that the house is condemned at the moment, so I need to bring it up to livable standards, and it does need to be inspected prior to anyone moving into the property. So no possible way that I can be a slumlord and move people in as is. So it will need to be inspected and go through the entire process to bring it up to livable standards.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. Does anyone else have any comments before we go ahead and call for a vote on this or a motion? Okay. May I have a motion then referring to the variance request to allow a multifamily unit to be located at 820 Cleveland Street in an R1 single family residential zone? There's someone that would like to make a motion as to approving this or not approving this?
The motion has to be made in the positive to approve it.
Thank you for that reminder.
Well, we can make a motion. If there's no second, the motion dies.
We can also make the motion and then deny it. That's generally what we do.
Yeah. Well, Cassie, to get it going, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Is there?
So I just would like to make sure that we all understand. So you are saying in your motion that you are approving the request for the variance to allow Mr. George to make this home a multifamily unit instead of leaving it at a single family? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, correct. And now that the motion is made, go ahead.
I think earlier you made a good point. We must clarify that the only reason we're doing this is the historic part of the house.
Okay, I'll amend my motion. Motion to approve case J20-0023 for the variance for this home only. And due to the fact of the significance of the house, that it was built in the mid 1800s.
Yes.
Okay, can I get a second on the amendment?
Support. Second.
Okay, we need to approve the amendment and then go back to the main motion. Chair, can you make can we get a motion to approve the amendment?
Yeah. If I can understand what you're saying, I'm still not clear, Bill, on what you're trying to say.
You have to, if you amend a motion, you have to pass that amendment before you can go back to the main motion, which was just a motion to approve.
Okay, so.
Okay, so because there's more verbiage in my motion, I had to make an amendment.
All right.
Okay.
So right now we're voting on the amendment that you just stated.
That is correct, madam.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all in favor of the amendment, the way that Bill stated it, say aye.
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 And opposed to the same sign. So that the amendment did pass.
So now we're back to the main motion.
Please record my vote on the amendment as abstain.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cassie, did you get that? Okay. So now we need a motion, though, as to allowing or disallowing the variance request. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, you're back to the main motion, so you're fine. We can have discussion before we vote too. So, yeah, if anybody's got any further comment.
So does anyone have anything else to say about this before we call the motion to either allow or disallow the variance request?
One question, Cassie, is this going to be a 2-unit or 3-unit? I forgot to ask that earlier.
That's something that you guys can mandate.
Okay.
But I believe it is currently separated into 3 units.
Into 3, okay. Thanks.
I believe, is that correct?
Okay, thanks for the clarification. I thought I saw it in here. I just was trying to find it and I couldn't clarify for myself. Thanks.
Actually,
that's all I have.
Currently, it's quite larger. It's more of a 5 unit.
8 units?
5 unit currently.
Oh, wow.
5, okay.
Yeah, it's quite large.
Okay. Are we all set? Does anyone else have any comments then or questions for Mr. George before we call this motion? So I need someone to please motion as to either allowing or disallowing Mr. George to use this dwelling for multi-family use instead of a single use, which is where it is, the neighborhood is deemed right now R1.
So I think this is getting confusing. We do have a motion to approve the variance due to the home's historic significance. So now we just need a vote on it. Do you want me to do a roll call vote?
Sounds good.
Is that okay?
But I'm probably the only one of all of us that are still confused. I understand that, but what about, where does it stand? Have we already done that amendment, approved the fact that he is able to make this into a multi-dwelling home?
Yes, so the motion on the table right now is to approve the variance to allow the home to be a multifamily dwelling unit.
Yes.
Because, or due to the home's historic significance. We can also attach other requirements if you would like, such as leaving it as a 5 unit, decreasing it to 3, whatever you would like, we can include that in the order. But the current motion is to approve it, to allow it to be multifamily based on its historic significance.
Agreed.
Okay.
So does anyone have any parameters that they want to set then before we go forward?
Okay.
Call the question.
Nothing.
Thank you.
Sure. Nobia?
Okay. Okay. Oh, Vanobi, you have a question?
No, I said call the question. I'm asking
Okay.
for us to vote.
He's asking for a vote.
Okay. I'm going to do a roll call vote then. Nancy Borchard?
Before we do that though, unless I missed something, have we set the parameters as far as how many people he can get into that home? How many families, how many, whatever we're calling it, family units?
We do not, but if this passes, we can say how many we would like.
Okay.
Okay. So Nancy, yes or no? Approve or disapprove?
Approve.
Okay. Zenobia Dallas?
No.
Bruce Gale?
No.
Jack Nash,
No.
Bill Ostash,
I'm going to say yes.
okay. We did get 2 yeses and 3 no's. We did need a full 4 yeses for this to pass, so this motion was denied.
Thank you, Cassie.
You're welcome.
So from here then, we encourage Mr. George to continue to think about this, but possibly to make it a 1-family dwelling, which can come back to us and talk to us about that possibly. Is that agreeable with everyone, or sound okay?
It is.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. George, for your interest in that. So can we move on to the next part of our agenda then, which would be old business? Does anyone have anything? Okay. We're back to election of officers for about the third one. Do we have anyone that would like to run for chairman? Or we also need vice chairman, I believe, and a secretary. And we don't all need to speak at the same time here. Let's.
I'm interested in running for any position.
You're interested in running for what?
Any position.
Oh, bless your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would you like the chairman?
You mean take your place?
Yes, ma'am.
You're doing such a great job, Nancy.
Well, then, can I interest you in being the vice chairman then, I guess? I don't even know who that is right now. I think it's Mr. Gale, correct?
It is Gail. So currently, Nancy, you are chair, Gail is vice chair, and Deanna was secretary. However, she's resigned from the board.
Right.
So feel free to nominate. Anybody can nominate anybody for any positions. However, Zenobia, are you a permanent member or are you still an alternate member? Okay.
I
Bill?
was sworn in.
Okay. Bill, you haven't applied. I don't think that we actually had another position. Okay. So
Well,
Bill is an alternate member, so he cannot be any positions. The other 4 of you can.
And
Even if I was not an alternate, I can't serve as in a position because I'm on council.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And I believe that Jack cannot either, from what he has said, or am I misinterpreting that?
I would do secretary.
That's the clarity you get.
You will be secretary?
Yes.
Okay.
Then I'm up for vice chair.
All right. Well, thank you for instilling that trust in myself, but we'll see how this goes. So, anybody else have any comments about that before we vote on this then? Okay, so we have Jack Nash would like to serve as secretary, Zenobia as vice chair, and I will retain the chair position right now. All in favor of those, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed by the same sign. So thank you to Jack and Zenobia. We're moving on to public comment. Does anyone have anything? And finally, if not, then we are to the adjournment of this meeting. Could I have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Support.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 And those opposed by the same sign. Thank you very much for your attendance this evening, and we'll see you next month. Thank you, staff, for all your work too. Appreciate it.